Coming up on Tech News today, Office 2013 subscription service launches. Also, Acer's Chromebooks starting to gain on Windows. And Rdio launches free music. All that and more coming up.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Tuesday, January 29th, 2013. Tech News Today is brought to you by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow. Send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today. For a 30-day free trial, go to sharefile.com, click the radio microphone, and enter TNT. And also by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell last year's gadgets. Find out what your used iPad, MacBook, iPhone, Galaxy S, and other smartphones are worth at gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Maya Zakhtar.
And I am Chad Johnson.
And this is the show where we look at the news in the tech world, try to put it in context with you, for you, not with you. Well, with you. You're in the chat room. Well, you're with us. And we start each time with the top 10 stories of the day in the news fuse. Happy Microsoft Office release day, everybody. Home Premium 365 came out today for just $10 a month, or you pay for a year at once, you get a little discount, $100 a year. Customers get access to Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, Publisher, and Access on up to 5 Windows or Mac computers, along with 20 gigabytes of SkyDrive space and 60 minutes of Skype calls. Now, you can get non-subscription versions. They run from $140 for the Home Premium version up to $400 for the top version. Office University has a subscription as well. University 365 sells to students for $80 for a 4-year term that only includes 2 computer installs. Office 365 for Business will be coming February 27th for $150 a year.
Yesterday, we passed along a rumor from 9to5Mac that Apple would begin offering its 4th-gen iPad with double the storage capacity. Well, it didn't take long. Today, Apple made it official. The 128-gigabyte Wi-Fi only iPad will cost $799, while a cellular version will sit at $929. The new iPads will be available on February 5th.
According to Ad Age, YouTube is working to launch paid subscriptions for channels. Ad Age says the first paid channels could cost somewhere around $1 to $5 per month and could roll out as soon as Q2 of this year. Reportedly, YouTube has reached out to channel providers to create paid channels.
Google Maps is filling in details for North Korea thanks to the contributions of citizen cartographers in Google Map Maker. Previously, Google's North Korea map only showed empty space and the location of Pyongyang. As more proven accurate contributions are made, Google will continue to update the map.
HTC is holding a press conference in New York City on February 19th to unveil its latest device. No other details have been sent to the press, but presumably it's going to be centered around an upcoming flagship Android phone, codenamed N7, and rumored to have some impressive specs like a 4.7-inch full HD display, a 1.7 gigahertz quad-core processor, and a 13-megapixel camera.
OpenTable announced it's acquiring food spotting for $10 million. If you're unfamiliar with food spotting, it lets users search for restaurants or types of dishes and then presents the users with photos from those restaurants. So how will the service be integrated? The CEO of OpenTable says that when you book a place using OpenTable, you could see photos of entrees from the food spotting catalog in your confirmation email.
WhatsApp is popular with the young dating set and also with privacy regulators, apparently. A joint Canadian-Dutch probe concluded that the mobile messaging service breached privacy laws in both countries. While messages sent in WhatsApp disappear after viewing, it was the app's requirement that they access the user's entire address book that ran afoul of privacy laws. WhatsApp has addressed many of the concerns, but could face sanctions if regulators are not eventually satisfied that they've addressed all the concerns.
Crashlytics, a crash reporting platform, is merging with Twitter, but will continue to work on its own product. Crashlytics builds a tool that allows developers to get reports on issues with apps and what exactly is causing crashes or bugs. The dashboards on the web and in the Mac app allow for detailed analysis and reporting of crashes so that developers can tackle the problems more efficiently. Crashlytics is already built into iOS apps you may use like Twitter, Vine, Yelp, TaskRabbit, and Kayak.
Good news, Yahoos. Yahoo released their Q4 earnings report, and how good it is depends on who you are. Yahoo reported revenue of $1.22 billion, excluding traffic acquisition costs, earnings per share of 32 cents on a non-GAAP basis. That beat analyst expectations of $1.21 billion and earnings per share of 28 cents. Display ad revenue was down, while search revenue was up. Now, it's not bad news, but not overwhelming evidence of a turnaround yet. Yahoo stock started the day up, then leveled off, and it's been actually down a little bit as we do our show now.
The World Trade Organization has given Antigua and Barbuda the approval to host its own sites that ignore U.S. intellectual property rights. The U.S. previously labeled the move as government-authorized piracy. The dispute between the United States and the Caribbean nation is over the U.S. efforts to shut down online gambling operations originating from that country.
This episode of Tech News Today brought to you by Citrix and ShareFile.com. There's lots of ways to share files out there, but if you want one that gives you professional control, security, and lots of features, and is dead simple on the other end, where somebody doesn't really have to know anything about what you're doing to be able to open the file, you want to check out ShareFile. Effective communication is the key. Sending emails with attachments that are too big that bounce back, that's a waste of time and energy. Drop your files into ShareFile. Citrix understands the challenges you face to create better solutions for business. Now, millions of accountants, lawyers, other business professionals rely on ShareFile. It's so easy for anyone to use. Allows you to send files of almost any size securely. You can track the progress of your files. Notifications are automatically sent when files are open, so you know they got it. You know they at least looked at it, and you can control who has access by using tools like password protection. You can even sign and edit files for streamlined collaboration. Plus, with ShareFile, you can access files from anywhere. You got a laptop, got a tablet, got a smartphone, access your files on all of those. We use ShareFile, and I want you to try it. Sign up with our special offer, a full 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone, and enter TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com and type in TNT. And we thank Citrix and ShareFile for their support of Tech News Today. Well, we were supposed to have Josh Topolsky with us today, but I think that Microsoft announcement pulled him away, so we're going to try to get him on again. But let's talk about this Microsoft Office announcement. Office 365 Home Premium and University launched today. $100 for the year, or you can pay $10 a month. There's a 30-day free trial if you want to just try it out. That's what I did. I installed it on my MacBook Pro and on my Windows desktop. You got 20 gigs SkyDrive, 60 minutes of Skype calls. No DVDs. If you go into a shop and you look for this thing, you're going to just see boxes on the shelf that have product codes in them. So that's going to throw some people off. They really want this just to be downloaded, and they're really pushing the subscription version. Even though you can get the $140 version called Office Home and Student, there's a Home and Business version for $220 and Office Professional for $400. They're saying, hey, look, it makes more sense to do $100 because that's less over the course of a year. You get automatic upgrades, and you get access to Office.com, which does a no-click install on any machine. If you need to access all of your documents in SkyDrive and have access to Word and Excel and all that stuff, they say that's much better. Now, it seems like they're hitting all the right notes here, Ayaz. Do you think that this will prevent or reverse migration to people using things like Google Docs and Dropbox?
I think the plans are interesting. The way that Microsoft keeps calling it like $8 per month, even though they don't offer that option, that probably would be a smarter way to keep people from moving away. When it comes to free, people love free. And there are free options of Office. But Office 365, it's definitely powerful. I'm just kind of thinking of the use cases. When do you need this kind of thing? In businesses, perhaps, maybe when you're at school. But it seems like if you can pretty much get away with using a lot of free tools. So I'm not really sure that it's going to do enough to keep people with Office.
I like the fact that you can get multiple installs, right? I buy a boxed copy of Office. There are certainly ways to install it on multiple devices, but that's not what Microsoft intends. The fact that I can pay $100 and that's less than the $140 I would shell out, put it on up to 5 devices, that's a big advantage. Sarah, you're living in the Mac world most of the time. I'm living in the Mac world most of the time. The fact that you can get this on the Mac at the same time as you get it on Windows is pretty neat. One thing I noticed, though, when I installed it on my Mac, I got Office 2011 for Mac. There's a brand new version for Windows 8 when you install Office 2013 on your Windows. Does that bug you?
I understand why Microsoft would do it. I guess it does seem a little bit disjointed. What about iOS apps? Is iOS part of this whole deal, or is it Mac only?
A couple stories I read today implied that iOS and Android apps would be on the way. I haven't heard anything from Microsoft.
So for me,
confirm
as a person who's living in the Apple world most of the time, that is not a deal breaker, but that makes me go, I have so many other free options. Google Docs is probably the most obvious one. I can install that on any machine that I can come up with pretty much, or access it anyway. So because I spend so much time on iOS, I think that is a little bit limiting to me. I do think that when we talk about, okay, well, some people are really, really going to want actual Word or Excel and there's probably a lot of educational institutions who just go, you know what, we all have to use the same program because we all have to have some sort of a standard. So in that case, I think that Microsoft is probably going to do pretty well, and these offerings seem priced competitively, but it's not something I'm going to shell out money for.
I'm sure that when it's in the Windows Store, sitting there up against the other free options, it's going to have stiff competition. But the thing is, it's got a trusted name, trusted brand. And it's just the right way Microsoft has to keep pushing this. They want to, they have to make this a service and to make it, when was the last time you bought an upgrade to Office anyway? That one works, that one that works fine. I will not upgrade it because I don't want it getting screwed up. I don't want the UI to change. I don't want a dock format being deprecated. So I stick to the old ones. So I don't know, it's almost like their products are good enough that they don't need upgrading. So they have to move to this service plan. Maybe that's just the future of their business.
Well, one of the nice things about the subscription base is, as a Mac user, when Mac version 2014 or whatever it's going to be called comes out, I'll get it if I'm still a subscriber. I don't have to go and shell out again for it. But like you say, I was using 2007, I think, when I upgraded. I upgraded with the 30-day free trial. I'm a little curious what's going to happen if I don't buy the subscription at the end of the 30 days free. Will they revert me back to 2007? I'm not sure how that works. But I was exactly like you, Sarah. I looked at this and I'm like, I'm using Google Docs, I'm using Dropbox. I don't see where this is going to fit in. It's all great if I was already working in the office world all the time. As you mentioned, if I'm in the enterprise, then this is fantastic. And I think Microsoft has done a great job with it. It does all the things you want to do, and it seems to work pretty seamlessly so far. When I started to change my mind was when I thought about the things that I do have to use. There are certain Excel documents that OpenOffice or LibreOffice, they just don't open them right, and I always have to turn to Excel to open them. Certain documents I get from people. There's also formatting issues. When I want to format something for an ebook, for instance, the templates are always for words. Now, they will work in LibreOffice, but I'm always a little leery that they're going to work correctly. And being able to share them directly in SkyDrive and be able to open them on any machine is a big advantage over having them in Dropbox and then download them and reopen them. So I don't know if that's enough to make me keep paying the $10 a month or plunk down the $100 a year, though. Let's move on then. We got lots of good stuff today. Acer, for instance, seeing more success in Chromebooks.
Yeah, Acer says that its Chromebooks are accounting for 5 to 10% of Acer's U.S. shipments since their release in November. Now, Acer President Jim Wong says that ratio is expected to be sustainable in the long term, and that Acer is looking to offer Chromebooks in other developed markets. He called Windows 8 not successful. Those are his words. While Chrome has no license fee, Acer has to spend more money on marketing and promotions to explain, hey, guys, this is what Chrome is. And Acer right now is not offering any RT machines or Windows RT machines because, well, they just don't see it as a viable market yet. They say they're still looking into it. Meanwhile, a PDF of an HP Chromebook leaked the other day. It's got a 14-inch screen. The embargo date on it seems to be February 17th. So we've seen Lenovo get into the Chromebook game in the education market. We've seen Acer in there, Samsung's in there. Now HP might be a competitor. Tom, do you think this is a backlash for Microsoft getting into hardware?
So wait a minute. What is Acer exactly saying? Are they saying they're selling more Chromebooks than Windows laptops?
No, they're saying that of their shipments, 5 to 10% of it are Chromebooks.
Oh, so in other words, we're selling some Chromebooks, and we don't like Windows 8, and maybe Acer particularly is a little miffed about the Surface tablet. I think this is a little bluster, frankly. I think this is a negotiating tactic on Acer's part. 5 to 10%, not bad. Believe me, I'm not saying anything negative about the Chromebook here, but I don't see widespread upswelling of people moving to Chromebooks. Do you?
I mean, I don't really know about that. I guess I'm kind of curious. Sarah, do you think people know what to do with a computer without a browser at this point? I mean, is it a browser enough? Like Chrome OS has a browser, it's got a couple of windows. I mean, if you give a person a computer without an internet connection, do they know what to do with it?
Well, I mean, you mean as opposed to a Chromebook?
Well, I mean, that's why they would use a Chromebook over Windows 8, because a Windows 8 machine is really powerful. But are you going to use everything it can do, or are you just going to be using a browser anyway?
Yeah, this seems to me that companies, Acer, being one of them, are saying, hey, 5 to 10% of our U.S. shipments, people are buying them. Maybe if we stay committed to this OS, even if it's limited, the percentages will crawl up, and then you see other companies like HP saying, we got one too. I mean, if Acer's selling Chromebooks, then other companies will want to have Chromebooks on offer too to take some of that market share.
The other thing is the Acer Chromebook is like $200. It's incredibly cheap. So the fact they're selling a bunch of them doesn't seem that surprising when it comes to actual numbers. I do see this a bit of posturing, though, because Acer and other partners are like, look, Windows 8 machines and the RT savings, just not there, because the amount of money it takes to set up these machines, explain, to the point where Samsung didn't want to do a Windows RT machine, to explain to the consumer, yeah, it's like Windows, but not really, and that's just it's a bitter pill to swallow. And it seems like enough of these companies are speaking up at this point to say, look, there's a viable option out there. We're going to use Chrome OS because I think people can actually get used to that.
I wonder what the percentage of Acer's machines that were netbooks at the pinnacle of netbooks popularity. Was it more than 5 to 10%? Was it less than 5 to 10%? Because that's my first impression here is Chromebooks are just taking the netbook sales from Acer that used to exist.
They're definitely low-cost, low-power machines. As somebody else is saying, you're telling me that Windows 8 is harder to explain than Chrome OS. I think Google has a chance to explain, hey, Chrome OS does this. It's got that windowed interface now. If they just get Netflix working on it, because it doesn't work as far as I know, if they can get these little boosts while Acer and other companies are saying, hey, look, we're not happy with Microsoft. Google actually, I think, has a really interesting position that they can get into the desktop market as an operating system vendor instead of just being the browser. I
don't really feel like Chromebook is hard to explain. Chrome OS is hard to explain. I think it's like you put it down in front of somebody and you're like, you want to get on the internet? Here's what you do. You want to access certain stuff? Read your email. Do the mapping features. Here's what you do. It's not that hard to figure out. It's limiting, but a lot of people don't care about that.
I think the original version was very difficult because it was that full screen browser. Now that they've moved to the windowed interface,
they got a little smarter with the user.
Well, I think it was more confusing for Windows users. If you were taking it to somebody who just isn't familiar with computers, I think Chrome OS is definitely easier because there's fewer things to learn. But Windows users, they're freaking out about Windows 8. It's not that much different. Going to Chrome OS, that was very weird and continues to be very weird.
Chrome OS to minimize your freak out. That's the option.
Yeah. Let's talk about a story that I don't think I expected to turn into reality quite so quickly. We were talking yesterday about rumors of a 128 gigabyte Apple iPad. Well, guess what? We got one.
Yeah, less than 24 hours later, in fact. And that's unusual. Usually Apple rumors tend to want to stick around for 6 months or so before we ever hear anything from the company, or it turns out to be something that's announced on an Apple stage somewhere. So 9 to 5 Mac was right on the money. They wrote up a rumor yesterday, and they were careful to say, listen, we've got sources, but we are not confident in saying this is a done deal. We're just passing it along, but it was basically 128 gigabyte Wi-Fi plus Wi-Fi cellular versions, $799 for the Wi-Fi only, $929 for the Wi-Fi plus cell iPad, and it's a fourth gen iPad. It's the iPad that was announced back in the fall, and it has twice the capacity. And it was an Apple press release. So yeah, there was no event, there was no Tim Cook on stage, there was no press gathering together at Moscone or anything. Macworld is happening right now, but Apple hasn't officially been involved in Macworld for years. So I guess there's probably a lot of people at Macworld who are interested, but I think the timing is probably just coincidental. And, now I think we're sort of at the point where it's like, all right, well, I asked yesterday, do we think that the product cycles are shifting? And Tom, you had mentioned, I just don't even know if Apple cares about product cycles anymore. They got something to push out that's better than the previous version. Maybe they just do that whenever they do that. But I do think that because of the timing of this, we're not quite into February yet. if Apple doesn't have something to announce that's big in March, when iPad announcements again have usually happened over the last few years, this can at least keep people satiated, I suppose, for a little bit longer if we're going to have to wait until the fall. Andy Anatko on Twitter had kind of an interesting thought. He said, I think that 128 gig iPad is mostly here to appeal to vertical markets like medical imaging that transact huge data. I know yesterday I was saying, well, usually my 64 gig iPad is perfectly fine unless I load it up with a lot of video. Then that's when I run into problems. But yeah, I think there are certain industries, particularly industries that have really taken to the iPad because, of course, it's portable and easy to use and hold in one hand, that this might make a lot of sense to double storage capacity. But Apple doesn't necessarily want to push that out in a press release because then it makes it seem like, as a consumer, you might not need all of this storage unless you're, working in a hospital.
When I saw this, go ahead, Tom.
No, you started first.
Well, thank you. Anyway, when I saw this,
Ayaz goes first. Tom can go afterwards.
When I saw this rumor yesterday, and then I saw this press release today, it makes me think that Apple's looking at the iPad the way it used to look at the iMac, the MacBook Pro. These spec bumps when it comes to this device. It means it's just part of that larger category. It doesn't need a giant event anymore. We don't need to say, look, we're going to spend weeks talking about it. One rumor one day, and then the next day it was true. I'm thinking that the iPad has become that's effectively their computer now. The MacBook Pro and the iMac and all this stuff is secondary. The iPad is their bread and butter. Also, with these high price points, it makes the 64 gigabyte one look cheaper. So you have this anchor pricing of very expensive $920 or whatever it is for the cellular version, $929. And I'm pretty sure that when they rev the iPad again, I'm almost positive that the lowest end version will get the X, because there's no reason to continue to keep such a small device available.
I have that problem with the iPad Mini. I mean, it's 16 gigs, and it's like now I've got a big old iPad and then the Mini, and you got 64 and 16, and they don't really sync that well. I have to
16.
Anyway.
Who could live like that?
Well, I thought I could, and I was wrong. Never do that to yourself.
I think Andy's onto something here. Maybe not medical imaging, maybe, but there are plenty of vertical markets like that. CAD. I've seen other people say this will be great for designers who want to load up these high capacity designs onto their iPad and take it with them. They don't have a network connection everywhere. So I think that is what this is for. And of course, Apple's not going to limit it to that in a press release. I'm a little surprised maybe they didn't tout it as an example, but there's plenty of people out there who just like, hey, I want more storage. I want to put as many movies on there as possible. So they want to sell this to as many people as possible. Isn't it funny, though, that we went from having an Apple keynote at Macworld every January, which meant a product announcement every January, to Apple doing their own announcements late in January, and now they're slipping into February, and then in March, and now they're just putting out a press release for. And I think you're right. If you add capacity to the iPad upper level, that doesn't need a whole big press event. So thank you, Apple, for not making us go through that song and dance.
Yeah, much appreciated. And only one day of rumors before it became reality. Very refreshing.
Right? There's a bunch of pictures. There's blurry pictures of a new iPad out there today, though. Just to.
Oh, do you want to talk about that too, or should we save that for another rumor mill?
Let's save that. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, the rumor mill never stops. I think this is good. I think 128 gig iPad press release. This is right. This is the way it should happen. And Apple's just going to release products when they're ready to release them. We'll talk a little more about that release schedule in a bit. Let's take a break and thank our other sponsor for today's show, Gazelle. You want to get that new 128 gig iPad? You might need to save up some bucks. That's why you need to sell some of your old gadgets. Or maybe you just got new stuff for the holidays, right? And you've got these old gadgets laying around that you don't know what to do with. There's all these studies I've been reading lately that people have sometimes thousands and thousands of dollars worth of electronics sitting around in their house, just in the garage, just stored, because they don't want to throw them in the trash. They know that's wrong. Maybe they're just too lazy to take them down to be recycled somewhere, or maybe they think, you know what, I can get a little money for them. That's what Gazelle's for. Get a little money for your old gadgets. Gazelle makes selling last year's gadgets fast and simple. Go to Gazelle.com, Gazelle.com. Tell Gazelle the condition Be honest, they'll buy broken iPhones and iPads in a lot of cases. Get a risk-free offer for your gadgets and lock it in for 30 days. Give you some time, get that data off of there, make sure you're good. If you're buying a new phone, get the new phone, get it up and running. And then once they get your gadget, you'll get paid fast by check or PayPal, just a couple of days. Go to Gazelle.com, get an offer for your iPhone, your Android, your BlackBerry phone, your iPad, other Apple products. Do it today because your gadgets may lose value every day that you wait, and you get paid in cash. Offer's good for 30 days. It's trustworthy. I've used it. Gazelle's paid out $50 million to over 500,000 customers. So go sell your last year's gadgets today at Gazelle.com. And we thank them for their support of Tech News Today. Well, Yahoo had their earnings. We mentioned that in the news fuse. Good revenue, good earnings per share, beat Wall Street expectations. Display ads revenue fell 3%. That wasn't great news, but it wasn't as bad as maybe it could have been. Search revenue rose 4%. In the earnings call, Marissa Mayer emphasized that they have better employee retention, they have better morale, they've identified 385 annoyances or barriers, and they're working on fixing them for employees. As far as acquisitions go, they were talking about how they got Snippet, which is sort of a Pinterest for news. They bought On the Air in December. They bought Stamped in October. They've identified 12 assets that they want to make digital daily habits. That's their strategy. Flickr and Mail being the first. Their mobile apps are the first step on that strategy. They see their opportunities in search, display, mobile, and video. That's where they're focusing their energies. And Marissa described their challenge as increasing usage, growing our international presence, and appealing to a broader demographic of users, roughly in that order of priority. Now, Jeff John Roberts at Paid Content pointed out that Yahoo has become a small fish. And in fact, Chad, if you go to that Paid Content article, same old Yahoo, why better earnings don't equal the turnaround, scroll down to that. This is a graphical representation of the Q3 revenues of Yahoo, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. Now, granted, it's Q3. They had better revenues in Q4, but so did everybody because of the holiday. You see that Yahoo and Facebook are about on the same level. Facebook's on its way up in revenue. Yahoo hasn't really been, and they're dwarfed by Google and Microsoft. So 2 full quarters of growth, that's good, but is this too early to talk about a turnaround? Is it too early to judge Marissa Mayer? Sarah, what do you think?
I want to be fair here, and I think in all fairness, yes, it's too early to judge her because we've only had 2 quarters. But I want to be fair. I think display ads falling 3% is sort of troubling. But then is search revenue on its way up for Yahoo? That's obviously something that's worked so well for Google. Is that something that Yahoo can continue to grow? Then I think that's a really good thing. I find it very interesting that there's so much emphasis on how unhappy employees seem to have been and how Marissa Mayer really wants to make them happier just to come to work and to not quit. 385 annoyances or barriers for employees. Well, yeah, you want to get that number down quite a bit. I think it's really promising that something like Flickr and, of course, the mobile version of Yahoo Mail, which has seen some improvement over the last few months, are priorities for the company because mobile is important, and those are actually really good assets that the company has. Some of their acquisitions so far, I kind of fail to see how they've made Yahoo better on a daily basis, but that stuff doesn't always happen overnight as well. I think it's all, everything's connected, right? You have happy employees. They want to work on projects. They want to build out Yahoo services that make sense for people. And then everybody profits.
I love the emphasis on employee retention, right? So they've kept a CEO for 2 quarters. So that's a plus. So there's not, even up top, there's not turnovers. And I really do think that impacts morale. And Sarah's saying it's all one big ecosystem when it comes to that environment. When it's Yahoo, I would be bold enough to say that I think she's a flat out success because she could have screwed this company up even further. We've seen other CEOs come in, Leo Apotheker, and screw up lots of things super fast, like incredibly bad management in a direction that was just the opposite of what they should have been doing. I think that Meyer's slow and steady approach to Yahoo, which was a mess for years, in 2 quarters, there's no way she could turn around in 2 quarters 100% or 180. But the thing is, just getting the people at Yahoo, getting the right talent, acquiring these small companies, getting the right employees in the right location, I think that this is the start of Yahoo making a comeback, or at least figuring out where their place is in this new world.
I honestly, I think that's a really good point, that you could call it a success that she hasn't messed anything up at Yahoo yet. I think we won't really know how to fairly evaluate her success until she's been there a year. I think people saying that this is a sign of a turnaround are saying it too early. It's just too early to tell. Most of the things she's put in place, as you say, are very cautious and conservative. They're not going to bear fruit that fast. So the fact that it's continuing to, just marginally outperform the year before, that was happening. That was actually happening before she took over. If you look back, it has been better since she took over, but that could be attributed to Scott Forstall, or I'm not Forstall. What's his name?
Scott Thompson.
Yeah, Scott Thompson. That you could make an argument that what we're seeing are the benefits of what happened before she took over still. So I think what she's done is she's stabilized the ship. It's not foundering. It's not all over the place, and it's going to take a while for the effects of what she's doing to really show. So I think everybody's wrong, both the positive people and the negative people. It's just too early to tell. Let's talk about Rdio launching free music streaming. When can I get it, Sarah? I can't wait. I'm an Rdio customer.
Well, you're fine then, because you are in the U.S., Tom.
But I know I want to stop paying.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't do that because you're already in the U.S. So we're actually being punished now. This is actually really, really good news for Rdio. Rdio has been under Spotify's shadow for a long time, even though they're extremely similar streaming services with similar pricing models, because Spotify has had such an international presence. In fact, they launched in Europe before they were ever available in the U.S. Rdio is now introducing 6 months free service for the UK, Australia, Belgium, Canada, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Spain, and Sweden. Now, if you read the fine print, this is for desktop and web versions of Rdio only. Rdio has pretty nice desktop app, and also you can access it via the web, but not mobile. So that's important because right now, Rdio's pricing model is unlimited web streaming for $4.99 a month, or unlimited for $9.99 a month, which includes unlimited web and mobile streaming. That's what I pay for. So, to give someone 6 months free is absolutely, that's great. I mean, I think anyone in any of the countries that I mentioned should check it out and see if streaming music is something that you're interested in, because it's free. But you don't get it on mobile, and I think that's a huge detriment in getting people to understand that streaming is pretty great and retain those customers and get them to turn into paying customers later. Rdio also says, after the 6 months is over, I mentioned what it costs in the U.S. You got a $9.99 or $4.99 option. Rdio says, we can't guarantee that that's going to be the same price in every country. And also, Brazil and Germany are two very large markets that are somewhat noticeably absent here. They're countries that have deals with other streaming services, and Rdio hasn't really said what the problem is, but kind of vaguely says sometimes these types of features and offers are determined by our partners. So looks like they may have run into a few roadblocks or at least delays with some countries. But, Spotify is this big international company in the streaming space. There are others, certainly, but that is something that Rdio has wanted to catch up to. And I think it's really interesting that Spotify is now in a beta test of a browser-based music app. And, Rdio has kind of started they've always had that if you were able to use the service. So I don't know. Do we think excluding mobile is the right way to hook people for 6 months, Ayaz? For me, I think it's really essential, but
when Spotify launched in the U.S., didn't they have a desktop client first, and then they took a while before they had a mobile component? Is that right?
Yes.
So if they're following Spotify's method, I think it does have a chance, because you get hooked. If you don't have the proper interface on a mobile device, people notice that a lot faster, I think, because you're constantly on this device. You're playing with the interface a lot more than you would be with a desktop. For some reason, I'll have something open in the browser, I'll hit play, even though it's really clunky, put it in the background, and I'll be listening to music all day. But I'm a lot more discriminating when it comes to an application. So I'm thinking if Rdio wants to make sure that their application is perfect for each place, that's something they need to be aware of. But then again, they've had an application for a while. So I'm not sure why they can't just port it over, other than maybe they don't want to run into any licensing issues that they would have a huge mobile expansion. They have to figure out, okay, well, how are we going to support all this? How are we going to pay for all of this?
Right. I think it's also this is good for Rdio, especially a service like Pandora. Everyone associates Pandora with free music. You can't totally pick and choose what you're listening to. You can pick your genres and that sort of thing. But Pandora is noticeably absent in Europe as well. So if you can get Rdio on the scene and it's available at least, desktop and web, and so people get used to, I can listen to whatever I want in exactly the order I want, whenever I want. That's awesome. Pandora might have something to worry about if they end up expanding, because as nice of a service is, it's not the same thing as treating it as your own music library.
Yeah, I think making this a free trial makes it make more sense. If you say, I get a 6-month free trial and I don't get mobile as part of the free trial. If I want mobile, I got to pay for it. Then that all falls into place for me. It's not a free streaming service, or as iBookery in the chat room said, it's Rdio free Europe, except for Germany, I guess. It's just a very generous and long trial period that you can use to try it out, and I think that's smart of Rdio when they're facing stiff competition like they are with Spotify.
Yeah.
All right, YouTube set to introduce paid channels, a little pay-per-view. What's going on here, Ayaz?
So Ad Age has a report. They have a couple of sources that are unnamed that says YouTube is prepping to launch paid subscriptions for individual channels. YouTube's reached out to a small group of channel producers and has asked them to submit applications to create channels that users would have to pay to access. Like I said before, the cost is $1 to $5 a month. And YouTube is also considering charging for content libraries and access to live events a la pay-per-view. They've actually done that before. You can pay to watch things on YouTube already, television shows and movies. Ad Age also says that YouTube could introduce the paid channels as early as Q2 of this year, and partners will have the option to include their own ads in their paid channels, but it's unclear what form that's going to be, whether it's going to be like all over the page or during the video or pop-uppers. I'm not really sure. Sarah, what experience would you want or expect from a paid YouTube channel? Do you want to see ads on top of this?
Sure don't. Yeah, that's my huge problem here. Is I understand that there's and YouTube kind of has its the golden kids of YouTube, the ones that get 2 million plus views a week, or there are those YouTube stars that I understand this would be potentially very lucrative, but and YouTube gets a cut and everybody's happy, but if I pay for a YouTube channel, if I subscribe and pay even $1 a month, I don't want to see any ads, period.
Tom, Hulu Plus gets a lot of flack because you pay for it and their ads. Cable television does not seem to be a problem with that. You pay for that, you get ads. Can Google or YouTube be able to explain, okay, yeah, we have premium content, and you're going to want to pay for it, and there's going to be an ad, but that's okay?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny about Hulu Plus. I'm one of those people who's like, I'm not going to pay for Hulu Plus just to get the stuff I can get on my laptop on mobile, and you're selling me ads. Like, if I could pay to get Hulu Plus that removes the ads, I'd be on it like that. But they still get lots of subscriptions. People are paying for Hulu in droves. So even though we all say we don't want it, apparently we do. And I remember back in the early days of cable when people said, well, why would you pay for television? You can get it free over the air. And plenty of these channels have advertising. So what's the big deal? Well, what the big deal is I wanted to see shows that I couldn't see. I wanted to watch MTV, and I couldn't watch that unless I paid for cable. So what's going to make or break this isn't whether they allow ads or not. What's going to make or break it is whether people will be willing to pay for access to these YouTube stars. It was funny, watching the chat room, half the people were like, what? Pay for cat videos? That's crazy. And other people were like, oh, well, don't they do this already? I mean, you pay for shows on YouTube. And that's the thing, right? Paying for a television show that comes from a major television network on YouTube, nobody blinks at. Paying for, what we used to think of as YouTube videos, the little home video stuff that was funny. No way are people going to do that. But there's this rising tide in the middle with things like H+, with things like The Guild that people might be willing to pay for. So I think that it all depends on what channels these are and how popular they are with their audience and how they make that pitch.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, YouTube it's everything. It's highly produced, really good, high production quality stuff, and it is cat videos. So it's you can't lump all YouTube into just home. It's home videos that are really crappy. Who'd want to pay for that? I think it's really important how the ads would be rolled out. If it's an overlaid ad, yeah, you can't do that to me if I've paid a monthly subscription for a channel.
Well, I can see if they're going to charge a little extra money, maybe you can skip ads faster. I mean, that's one of the things that YouTube has that Hulu Plus doesn't. You can't.
That's a good one.
We say skip after like 10 seconds or whatever it is. I mean, this might be, if this does happen, this might be the closest thing we'll get to like a la carte cable. If they can get other content producers or like third tier, fourth tier cable channels to come over and charge for that just directly, I would love to see that kind of happen because I'm really sick of the idea of these bundle packages. I think this might be a sneaky way to get more content producers over there, maybe even get some serious studios, serious channels behind it.
And don't forget, I mean, they're not going to make you pay for every video on YouTube here. This is just limited channels. So most of the remix content on there, that's going to stay the way it is. What they're saying is, hey, you know what? Hannah Hart, really popular, has a huge following. She wants to charge people to get her show or get maybe a special version of her show. Those people will watch a pre-roll ad and pay for it. They she's that popular, and there are other people like that. I do like this idea of kind of a cable channel, maybe that's not succeeding as well as it could have, using this as a side route possibly. I
would love to see if there's disputes we always see, either it's Fox or AMC, they're having an issue with Dish or whatever, Time Warner. Like, let's screw it. We'll put it on YouTube. I mean, AMC was kind of doing this for free anyway, but why not put it on YouTube and get $1 or $2 for the subscription, and just put it on the cable companies to win them back.
All right, let's finish up with the randomizer. The Navy is looking into odor-sniffing robots to load bombs on aircraft carriers. This is something that maybe a lot of people don't realize is a lot of manpower to get weaponry moved around on a big aircraft carrier, and it's over long distances. So what they want to do is allow robots to work in these very tight spaces, going from down below the waterline all the way up to the windy deck in super hot conditions by following smell. There would be a leader robot, which would be controlled by a human, who guides it along and dispenses a chemical pheromone behind it, and then follower robots pick up that smell, kind of like ants, analyze it, and follow along to help load the ordnance. And it should take some of the load off of aviation ordnance crews, often known as red shirts, not the red shirts from Star Trek. It's actually what the red shirts of Star Trek are based on. And that could make it much more efficient to staff these aircraft carriers. You wouldn't need as bigger crews, and you'd have little ant-like robots who follow each other around by smell.
I think this definitely would work if you translate this to like a robot dog. It just follows you home because it just smells like, oh, there you are. It just seems like a really bizarre idea. This thing won me over based on the title alone. I mean, it's based on odor. It's just sniffing things. You want robots being able to smell, Sarah?
I think the efficiency sounds great on one hand, and then, the people who the robots would take over for probably aren't so into this whole idea. And what are the chemicals made out of, and how dangerous are they for the human that's leading that first robot? Nobody's saying anything about that. Is it made out of, Agent Orange?
Why do we have to assume that if it's a chemical, it's made of Agent Orange? I mean,
I'm not assuming. I am asking. You didn't say that it wasn't.
Do you put chemicals on your face?
Yeah, but I only pick the chemicals straight from the middle of flowers. So well, it's very natural. Bouquets from farmers market. That's where this all comes from.
Chemicals that are
I'm just asking.
Distinguishable. There's not a lot of flowers on aircraft carriers.
I want to know what's going into the atmosphere. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
It's actually going on the deck, I think. They also need a chemical that's going to evaporate and not leave a smell after 20 minutes, because they're going to have another crew coming through. They don't want them to get all confused.
It's true. Fine. Yes, fine. This is awesome. Great.
They should leave flower smells. It would brighten up the aircraft carrier.
It'd be like Vegas.
But wouldn't that mean that robots would start following anybody who's carrying flowers? Like somebody's apologizing, and now has robots following them.
Yeah, I guess it's got to be a really specific smell.
It have to be very rare flowers that would not otherwise be allowed.
See, that'd be. Can you imagine like a group of robots, and you're like, oh, it's a pheromone thing, and you're like flower, and then all of a sudden they start diverting, and they're going in all sorts of directions.
I'm imagining
you could really screw this up.
Now we've gone into Daniel Suarez territory.
I've destroyed the anthill with my flower.
All right, let's move on to the calendar.
Okay. BlackBerry 10 launch event is tomorrow. We're going to be covering it live at 7 a.m. Pacific time. Tom is anyway. Tom, do we know for sure that that's happening? Do you have do you have support?
Well, I'm going to do it if we can get a board up, which I'm sure we can. So price and availability will be announced, all that good stuff. They're going to do a live stream from RIM, so no reason why we shouldn't carry that live stream and do a little commentary on it.
Okay, cool. Also tomorrow, Facebook earnings and EA, Electronic Arts, earnings reporting. And Windows Phone 7.8 is supposedly arriving on AT&T Lumia 900 owners sets. Handsets, that is.
All right.
That's tomorrow
Let's see what's incoming. It didn't say incoming message, did it?
No, it didn't.
There you go.
Weird.
It's because Chad's on the board and he wants to sabotage the show.
Yeah, I hate this show.
We got voicemails today.
Man,
We do.
we have a mole.
So we have a voicemail from Alex. Hey, Alex, what do you have to say?
About to get to that.
Hi, this is Alex. So there is a pen who translates things. Lame. How about this one? You have the pen, you read something in a paper book, maybe because you hate trees, you mark it and bam, what you marked sinks to the cloud, like Evernote or something. You can read a complete book, and after finishing the book, bam, all your favorite quotes are in the cloud. Or you read a paper and cloud. $1 million idea.
You know, actually, other than the killing of trees part, makes a good point, right? The ability to share quotes and save quotes like that.
I don't know. I mean, it sounds a lot like the Microsoft campaign. Just boom cloud. That sounds like a thing.
Boom cloud. Boom cloud. We also got another voicemail. Good voicemails today. This one about Apple's release schedule.
Hey TNT, this is David from Brisbane, Australia. Yesterday you were talking about Apple's release strategy, and I've got a theory. Apple wants to make sure that its most popular products are released for the holidays. So the new refresh of the iPhones and the iPads now come out in October. They used to be earlier in the year. Now, that leaves the rest of the year for releasing new products which are untested and small tweaks like an iPad with extra storage. It makes sense to me then that an Apple TV offering would come out sometime between March and July, and if it becomes super popular, I'd assume that in 2014 or 2015 its product cycle would change and the new refresh would come out in October for the holiday rush. What do you guys think? And thanks for the show.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Makes
Do you
perfect
guys
sense
see any
if you
chinks in that armor?
Well, I mean, the Apple TV has been a mythical unicorn for quite some time now. But yes, that does make sense to me if we are indeed making a little bit more room for a bunch of fanfare for a yet to be released Apple product. I hope so.
I like this idea. Maybe not about the Apple TV. You're right, but I like this idea that they use the earlier windows to introduce new stuff and then move them to a cycle that gets them close to the holidays. Because it never made sense to me why you would continually release stuff away from the holidays. You want to get that holiday bump.
Well, wouldn't it just be to keep their quarters, each quarter very big? Because if you just have that load on Q4, Q3, it might look very uneven. But I like the shifting window, though.
Apple hasn't worried about quarter-to-quarter performance much in the past. They have a much more long-term view, but it's certainly a reasonable concern for a lot of companies.
We got an email from Alan. He says, the obvious fix for Barnes & Noble is to drop DRM from their ebooks. The way things are now, they also ran in Amazon's game. Their hardware isn't enough, better, or cheaper than Amazon's, and they can only dream of matching the ebook selection from Amazon. They aren't different enough to win. But what if they became known as the hassle-free source for ebooks that you could easily read anywhere on any device, even a Kindle? I know I've been burned by DRM enough that I refuse to buy music, movies, and especially ebooks with DRM ever again. It would take guts to drop the DRM, but you don't have to look any further than Amazon to find an example of how much of a difference it could make. The only attractive feature of Amazon's MP3 store for a long time was that it offered legitimate music purchases free of the hassle that DRM brings. It's a really interesting way to go.
I think this is a very, very good advice. I'm almost certain Barnes & Noble won't follow it, but that would be a way to disrupt that market. Say, hey, Barnes & Noble books, buy them at bn.com, read them on your Kindle, read them on your Nook, read them on whatever. We don't care. DRM free. Be super smart. A bunch of publishers wouldn't like that. That may be the problem there, is that you have Tor saying all of our books are DRM free, but a lot of publishers are like, yeah, we're not going to allow you to sell our books DRM free. So that would be the stumbling block there. Well, that's it for this episode of Tech News Today. Thanks, everybody, for submitting stories at our subreddit, technewstoday.reddit.com. It's one of the places we look to find out what stories we're going to cover each and every day. You can also find us on the web, twit.tv/TNT. You know what? We had a little problem, a little hiccup in our show notes posting, but Ayaz is on it. We're going to get the show notes up to date, so that's where you go to find links to that and our wiki and everything else. You can also give us a call, 260-TNT-SHOW, and email us, TNT@twit.tv. We'll be back tomorrow with Julio Ojeda Zapata. See you then.